Welcome again. And it's been a long time that we had the discussion about improvement of English. Generally, because I come across people and I find that they have got one thing. They keep asking me. I often get asked this question that how people can improve their spoken English. I've seen many people they've been learning with English medium, but they always find it difficult to speak in English, and they're able to write good English, but when it comes to speaking, they find it difficult to utter or to express or to articulate their thoughts in English, and they always look for some help. And so I thought that why should we not come up with the one more video on the same, because we did previously we did a video on the same, but again we thought that we should be trying to add something new, and
Mm,
some other uh, you can say some other techniques which can help people build up their or improve their English communication, and this can level up their English language as well, and this can somewhere help them to get a good job in their life, because we know that in corporate world this is a dominant, this is the dominant language, and most of the people, especially most of the organizations, deal with people who are from other countries, and English is used as a link language, because not everybody knows Chinese, not everybody knows Japanese, and these are very tough languages. When it comes to English language, it is the simplest of them as far as I know, because I've been teaching this for quite a long time, over a decade, and I found that this is the simplest of them, and I think people who know this language can
mm,
do far better than those who somewhere
mhm.
who are lacking somewhere, especially as far as this language is concerned. So, Robin, over to you. We just want to make it very easy for people to know how they can build their English communication, and how can they become, how can they speak like professionals, right? Because we have also been through the same kind of experience, and if I talk about me, so I've always been a Hindi medium student, and you also did your education from MP board, I mean state board, and somewhere we struggled and we had to make a lot of efforts to be able to speak in English, right? So now, as we have learned the ways in which people can brush up, or they can learn the language easily, although they'll have to make some efforts, but yes, it's going to be quite easy for them, because one thing, that if you know the right way, then you can your progress becomes very rapid. But if you even though you're studying very hard, or you are making efforts, but you are making those efforts in the wrong way, I think you will have to make a lot of efforts, and but you will not be able to produce those desired results which you've been after for quite a long time. So that's why I thought that why should we not give it a shot once again, and we should come up with some recipe which can help people build good communication skills. Especially, I'm talking about English language and English communication. Over to you.
Okay, good evening, first of all, and good evening to all the audience. Okay, so this is very right that yes, we need this language, and especially when we are working in some, metros, cities, doing any professions in multinational companies. So we need to be pretty mature with this language. So it's not just we need to deal with people living in the country, but coming from all status across the globe. So our command must be pretty good and manageable, first of all, especially when we deal with people. And it becomes even more important when you are working on a certain projects. I have seen many of my friends and many of my colleagues who are working on some projects in some MNCs. They usually deal with some foreign countries people, and they have to meet with their accents, they have to meet with their overall understandings, their cultural way of communications, right? So
Yeah.
in that way they have to be very you know sound, right, in terms of speaking, right? But since we are talking about how to build up communication skills and how to be a good a writer, let's say, right? I mean, this is very important for all the people, right? That what is their that reason? I mean, for which they really want to develop this, language. So as I always tell, that must people must have a strong reason, right? When
Yeah.
you have a strong reason, it's always be very easy for you to get in touch with the language. It's not just with this language, with everything that
Yeah.
they are willing to acquire. So there should be at least one strong reason behind it. Second important thing comes as a question: what is that department that one wants to excel in?
Yeah.
So, for example, people working in some telecaller services as a customer care, as we
Yeah.
know unemployment is prevailing everywhere in the country, so
Yeah.
they go to different MNCs
BPOs,
and
right? BPOs.
BPOs, business process outsourcing, international
Yeah.
and domestic. So they have to be very effective speaker, very fluent speakers. So it's not just they are dealing with their vernacular form of communications. They have
Yeah.
to transcend this particular limit. They have to just grow even more in this language. So they need to be very much, you can say, perfect, if not perfect, but not less than perfect, right? So when they want to be a good communicator, so few things they need to be very clear about, that whether their way of communication is skill is effective enough, means people on the other sides are able to understand that.
Yeah.
Because when you are working in some call centers, it's all based on how you communicate with the people, right? It's all based on the feedback that you get, right? So your communication skill must be very laconic, very clear and crisp. It must be somewhere very coherent. Okay, so you have to be very be on your point, right? We people have vague ideas, and it's not very easy for a newcomer, especially in this field, to come out and arrange those ideas in a more sequential order, okay, and make it a speech, right? So it takes a lot of time, but yes, practice makes everything viable and feasible. So
Mm.
the first solution for everyone, that everyone says, is that keep practicing. Consistency is the only way out. That can really give you those remarkable results that you are really seeking for. Now, one thing which I want to share with the audience here is that, see, both language speaking or spoken and writing are two different departments,
Yeah.
right? And both require a different level of practice. I, being a communicator for over a decade now, I'm in legal field, so I have this opportunity to communicate with people, especially in English language. Usually in high court, you come there, and mostly English is spoken widely there, and in Supreme Court too, right? So when you communicate with the people, I think it's very easy to communicate with the people in English language. Probably because when you speak with the people, it's not just your words that is there helping you to convey your message, but your full expressions on your face, your gestures, your postures. So all are there as an ancillary tool, helping you to communicate, to convey your point, put across your point to the other side. So in speaking on spoken terms, I can say it is not going to be very difficult. It is not going to be very, you can say, hectic. But still, as I say, when you are going to choose a certain department, which actually seeks a certain kind of disciplinary from the way you communicate, because a single, anomaly in your communications might lead to ambiguity in the sentences, and which further lead to different kind of meanings, the way you said something which should not be, right? So it may cause a little disturbance in, especially in communication, or may lead person to believe something else, right? So in these kinds of professions, you have to be very strict on what you say. You have to be very articulate on what you say. Your thought must be so consistent with your words, right? So when you have this particular requirement, okay, for your profession, and English is the first language there, then you have to be very focused on what you speak, and for this you have to practice a lot. You have to practice a lot. Moreover, you have to practice what you think. So we all are having those myriad of thoughts every single time, and
Yeah.
these thoughts are in not properly organized form. So it's not very easy to throw it out, okay, in a sequential order. So there should be a practice all the time. that
Yeah.
how we can put all these things in order and make it a meaningful sentence
Yes,
for the
correct.
person to understand, right? So these practices are very important. But when it comes to writing, especially in English language, I mean, this is even more tougher part than speaking, because there you need to be even more punctual, because you don't have an alternative or substitute or a replacement, right? For
Yeah.
all that mistake you possibly may commit through writings. But let's say if you communicate with the people, and for let's say you commit any mistake, you speak something which you should not, but still you can there and you can correct it right from that person, before that person. Or
Yeah.
maybe your facial expressions, might be helpful for
Yeah.
people to understand your exact meaning, which sometimes uh, you know uh, happens with most of the people. In the absence of a particular word to narrate a particular state or a condition or a circumstance, our facial expressions, gestures, and postures, work all together combinedly and make it a compact, you know, uh, full, or make it a meaningful, sentence for the people to understand, right? So, I mean, these things are very important, and for all the, I mean, learners who are trying to learn, speaking as well as writing. One thing which is always very important, that I don't think we must try to imitate people. We must try to reach to that perfection level, because it always causes us a lot of stress. And once you are with this stress on you, your productivity goes down, it dwindles significantly, right? So we have to be very easygoing. We have to pick up our ways. Secondly, there is no one size fit for all kind of rule and formula
Yeah.
that's actually there in the English learning language for the students to come and just take it, gulp it, and you are all fine with this, and you are all perfect and having a good command over communication skills. So it's not like that at all in this language department, because it's just like an art. Some people might feel comfortable in learning language through readings. Some people have a good neck, you know uh, especially through watching videos and movies. Okay, some people may do through other ways, through other possible mediums.
Yeah.
But one thing is very important for those who are looking for spoken, that they must speak as much as they could, because these words, sentence constructions, and all these you know important and the subtle activities, expressions, okay, which usually English speakers do, must all be familiar to you with your tongue. Until unless you have this and gain this familiarity, you cannot be a perfect and a confident speaker, a communicator. So
Yeah.
that's what we learn, that we need to speak continuously, regardless of how we speak, because the first stage of your learning is going to be all haphazard, which is quite okay and one
Yeah.
must be very comfortable with. But as you grow with this process of learning, you'll find that yes, you are improving, and you improving far better than what you did and learned before. And once you reach to the point where you become so comfortable in in making expressions according to the requirement of the situations, in actually using and utilizing words and vocabulary as you find fit and suitable, especially for the circumstance to be elaborated about, then you become even more, expressive. So English language is all about, how many ways you can express one things, and how many, ways you can use in speaking one sentence, depends on how you have practiced throughout.
Yeah.
Okay, so your past and present and your future all must be engrossed in continuous practice. So there is nothing like as one point that you need to achieve and you need to stop this practice. So practice must be there with you. I mean ceaselessly, and then you'll find that you're going to be a good communicator. So keep speaking is the first and the foremost thing. One must learn it. Second, one must not be impatient about the grammatical mistakes right in the beginning, as it
Yeah.
happens with many people. And third important thing, don't try to build up this habit of translating into the English, because this is going to be very difficult after a certain point of time. because once you do this and make it a part of your habit of communication, then you are going to be stuck, and this stuck is going to be a permanent part of your communication, so you will lose that fluency touch to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
Never ever compare Hindi with English. English is a different language, Hindi is a different language. Both work on different, structures and forms, and both have their different expressions. So
Yeah.
learn expressions than a construction. That is going to be then easy for you all. Over to you.
And one thing I loved when you said that we must have some pulling attraction. If we don't
Hmm.
have that pulling attraction, then we won't find ourselves to be drawn towards learning it, right? If I talk about the students, if I talk about myself as well, because I can tell people more on the basis of my own experience. What I believe is that first of all, what they are supposed to do is to work on their construction, because that's important. You must know how to frame the sentences, right? Generally, what happens, because I generally see people giving advice to other people that they should be going for reading newspapers, they should be going to read the subtitles of the videos and the web series and the movies. But it's if the people don't know how to frame the sentences, it's going to be quite difficult for them. And once they start doing this, they won't be getting anything. First of the first thing they will face is that
Hmm.
they're not getting anything at all.
Hmm.
When this happens, they'll be discouraged, disheartened, and they
Right.
will then give up half the way.
Yeah.
So what they are supposed to do in the beginning is that they should be working a lot on their construction. And second thing you mentioned, that that really resonates with me. Whatever I've learned, I should not be going for perfection, because as you keep learning, you keep growing actually. I don't think that we will ever become perfect, right? Because there are people who are better than you, they will
Hmm.
who are better than us, right? So the perfection is a myth. But if you keep practicing, you keep bettering yourself, right?
Right.
So suppose you've worked on the construction, you're done with all those constructions that which are required in the beginning, and then you are supposed to utilize those expressions and those constructions now which you've learned throughout the journey. And as you master those constructions, then you will find somewhere that you are now getting comfortable with the
Right.
language, because that's what I've experienced initially. When people actually, we are not from English speaking families, because we all in our families, people
Right.
really speak Hindi, so we don't have people to talk to. So what we are supposed to do is we should be speaking as much as possible in English, right?
Right.
And for this reason, we should be seeking the company of those who are able to speak, or we can even take the help of the teachers, because they are the ones who will never make fun of you,
Right.
and the people who are learning. If they have got a community, if they've got friend circle where they can utilize
Hmm.
it, they should be giving it a shot, right? So once it is you're done with it, then I think we should be going with the vocabulary. That is the inseparable part of learning
Right.
language acquisition, because the whole language is made up of words. And initially we should not be going for movies, because the kind of advanced vocabulary they use, and they
Right.
use very slangy words. So I think we'll lose all all that is standard, because
Hmm.
we are supposed to learn the standard language, because we will be dealing with people who are we will be dealing with people who are working in our offices, the
Hmm.
people who are working in the organizations. And somewhere we are supposed to write emails, and we are supposed to deliver some you can say seminars. And there you cannot use the kind of words which you pick up from movies, because you've also watched the movies. There are a lot of slangs, right? And these slangs are not supposed to be used while
Hmm.
you are in your offices, or you are in your business, or you are talking to someone who is you can say who are educated, right? So we should be very much concerned about vocabulary, and vocabulary should be learned very cautiously, right? And for that reason, I would suggest people to go for reading. they should be going for reading a lot. And reading should be done on the basis of their interest, because I cannot simply tell them they should be going for this kind of genre and all, because people have their own own interest. And if
Right.
if they go for for the interest which has been suggested by somebody else, I think they'll be losing that enthusiasm which they have right now. So they should be very careful about reading, right? And once they've done the reading, I think there are some benefits of reading. First, you practice your constructions which you've learned already. You'll
Mm.
be coming across some different, some variations and some different constructions which you might not have learned otherwise. Third thing, you'll be coming across the expressions which are generally used by people who speak English, and you'll be coming across idioms and phrases which are inseparable part of the language. And if you are doing all these things without reading, I think you will not get all those opportunities which you'll be getting while you're reading, because you come
Right.
across many different words and expressions. And this is
Mm.
what helps you. This is what makes those words and expressions embedded in your head. And because you are kind of repeating or revising. And when this happens, then you don't forget the words which you've already learned, those constructions which you have already learned. And then it becomes quite easy for you to remember what I read and what construction is, and how can I use that in my own conversation.
Right.
So this is what I have learned and what I've been teaching my students. I always tell them to go for construction first, because that's the important thing. Suppose if I'm talking about past, but I don't know how I can talk about past, then I'll be using present. I think that
Right.
this is going to make it just you can say very complicated for people to understand what you're trying, really trying to talk about. And then they should be working a lot on their expression, no, those vocabulary. And they should be then not
Mm.
underestimating the importance of practicing on everyday basis, right?
Mm.
So whenever they get a chance, they should be using the language, so that their tongue can become no tongue can get trained. Because we are don't know, these are the speech organs, our jaws, our
Mm. You're right.
tongue and everything. If you've learned a lot, but these speech organs are not at all trained,
Mm.
then no matter how hard you try to bring those words and speak with them, they won't cooperate with you.
Right.
And as a result, you won't be able to utter
Mm.
those words, and
Right.
you won't be able to articulate your thoughts and all. So that's really important. So what other things they can do, I will be talking about, but I want you to say more about it. I mean, how people can learn the words in a practical fashion so that they don't forget them. At the same time, they are able to use those words very comfortably, because learning is a different thing, and utilizing and incorporating
Right.
those words completely different matter. So now talk about how they can expand the vocabulary, and how they can master the words, so that they can spice the language up.
I know only one thing, that when a person is seeking for that development in English language, then on a certain conditions he can feel himself to be a great communicator when he finds himself to be in the situation where he wants to be.
Yeah,
And it happens with most of the learners. So for example, when I was in my early phases of learning, I kept imitating things, and I kept reiterating things. I kept speaking to myself in many ways. I kept creating and fabricating situations, okay, for no reasons. And I kept communicating, especially in English language, to know whether I'm able to, narrate the same incident or the fabricated one in the same way as I want to do. And every single time when I fail, I realize that I'm not a good communicator.
yeah,
So, I mean, we all have this inbuilt, measurement or a skill on which we measure our communication skills. And therefore, we keep working on this. So, people who are very passionate about, very ardent about it, how to build up communication skill in an instant way. So, there is a particular, process which must be followed. Okay, I mean, there is no shortcut, first of all. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what that we must be very, aware of.
People should not
Now,
be
when
believing in quick fixes.
it is not possible, especially in language or let's say in any other things, because
Yeah.
you are trying to develop your entire, communication skills, especially in that language which is not familiar to you. So you need
Yeah.
to work hard a lot. So it's not your brain has to work a lot, but your mouth muscles needs to be consistent with that,
Yeah.
right? So we have to work all together. Now, since you talked and asked about vocabulary building up, you talked about how we can be more uh, into practicing all these kinds of terms, terminologies, and phrases, right? So that
Yeah.
we could feel, confident, feel optimistic about. Because when you communicate with people, you internally know that how you are speaking. It happens with most of the people.
Yeah.
So there is a certain kind of technique, there is a certain kind of system and arrangement of these all phrases, which I mean sound very natural. So, for example, if I go inconsistent, breaking all those important standard rules, then I in my personal observation find out in a quick that yes, I'm doing this much in some wrong way, which I should not be, right? So we all know this on all things, because we have this this instinct somewhere working that this particular phrase is not consistent as what I'm speaking, because I have never heard about it, I have never read about it, especially in any books. Since you talked about why we should not go to watching movies to build up our communication skills, to build up that vocabs, I'm completely in agreement, because these movies are, according to me, okay, good for many people, but for those who have, just passed their 2 or 3 levels of learnings, and they have reached above their mediocre. So for in their advanced, learning sessions, they might get a little bit help from these movies. A better replacement of these movies, according to me, which really works out a lot and that really helped me a lot, is that reading literature.
Yeah.
Why I say reading literature is very important, because when you read any literature, and see, when I say literature, it must be a professional one, it must be a technical one. So we have a number of literatures around us. I'm talking about books that are recommended in MA English literature or BA literature. So, for example, you go and read the British literature, so you come across with many books out there and then you start reading about it. One thing you find it very interesting in those literature is that every single construction, every single phrase is well narrating the entire scene. And what is more important, which is important, and which is, I say in my term, icing on the cake, is that every nuances of our activities are well narrated with a specific and respective words and vocabulary. And that's what we learn from these literature, and that's really important, by the way. So every single expressions of yours, let's say you are talking to someone and your mood is swinging, then you will have a different vocabulary to narrate that particular swing. You are being absolutely you can say impassive to people, you are not giving much response to the people, they will be using word quite stolid. Okay,
Yeah.
if you are feeling little bit tired, or you are being little bit, you can say exhausted, they might be using the word weary. I mean, single situation is well narrated and explained and elaborated by different vocabs, and all these different vocabs are done with a proper placement. That's really interesting, by the way. Many people say that it's very hard and sometimes boring to read literature, but trust me, those who are into the field of learning English language will never ever be found saying that English literature is boring or could be boring, because this literature has the ability to let you feel those characters dancing before your eyes. That much power these words contain in them. That's why we call it a English literature. So we must go through this English literature and its book. Second thing, which is also very important, don't just switch from one book to second book. We don't need to be compiling books in our room just for the you know ostentatious purpose, just to show people that I have read this number of books. Let's see, come to my room, this compilation of book I have read in just 1 years and 2 years. We should not be behaving in that way. I'm always against this. It's always better to go, multiple times
Yeah.
for just one book. If you can do that, two books of English literature containing of 500 pages each would be more than enough for an English speaker to be a fluent and an advanced English speaker. That amount of vocabs one will be able to, absorb and imbibe. And not just absorbing it, but with a certain kind of accuracy to be maintained every single time when the person is going to speak with people, and let's say even a foreign person, right? So this is very important. As I have seen and I have experienced it, because when I started reading these, literatures, I found there was a quick surge and uptick in my way how I was communicating before, and then started communicating altogether very significantly and substantially in many ways. I had a lot of vocabs. I had a lot of, you can say, constructions and expressions to elaborate and put across just one single incidence. And all these vocabs, all these constructions are well, you know fitted in my memory. I was not able to, I was quite able to recall and recognizing all these words, because we all know our work works on forefront: learning, retaining, recalling, and recognition.
Yeah.
So I was able to learn all these vocabs and construction and expressions right from those literatures, and then I moved to retain it. And how did I retain it? By doing a multiple reading of one particular book, and then I tried to recall it, especially when I found the similar situation arising before me, to use and utilize all those sources. So as what you said, how you could be more practicing and utilizing into all these important vocabs and construction. So this is
Yeah.
the way how we can do it. So when you read any book and you find the same situation arising before you, because this literature are nothing but a mirror of our routine life, a mundane reasoning. A single literature deals with our single personal life. So you will find many things are happening there in the literature. You do the same things in your life. You are sleeping, you are walking, eating, but they are narrating in a different way altogether. So in this way, you are compiling up a lot of vocabulary, and that too using it with more confidence. Because this sanguine attitude while communication is very important. Then you be having a good command over communication skills and with a lot of vocab, but you fail to communicate it certaining maintaining that positive attitude. You might have heard many speakers always saying it's okay if you are committing grammatical mistakes. Many speakers do it now. Even they are good communicator, they keep continue committing mistakes even when they address the large audience from the days from the podium. But why don't we find them a bad communicator? Because they never make us feel that they are somewhere faltering in their speeches.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have the neck of managing things up, even when they know that they have committed grammatical mistakes, or let's say they have done something else which should not be. But they are well prepared and well, you can say, focused on their part of meaning that is there to deliver to the large audience, and that's how they maintain these things altogether. So therefore I say, we need to read one literature book multiple times, apply all those vocabs in our routine life, and try to assimilate vocabs, expressions into our life, and express it as much as we could. So we come from the MP background, right? We
Yeah.
don't get and didn't get literally, on past, to be communicating with people. Now this is very possible and probable that people in today's time may get in touch with even a foreigner using a certain application.
Yeah.
But then we didn't have that technology, right?
Yeah, we didn't even have the access to the internet.
Absolutely, we didn't have that technology at all. Our
Yeah.
access was almost, there was not even a question of accessing, but there was
Yeah.
no such technology,
Yeah.
right? So now the time is different today, but the practice needs to be same and consistent, right?
Yeah.
So this is very important. Read one literature at least twice, thrice as much as a person want. and try to imbibe the entire expressions, and then you will find so much you boosted up with confidence within you. And when you communicate with the people, one more thing I want to add to this, even when you commit any grammatical mistakes, or let's say any blunder you have just made it, especially in your professional meeting or whatsoever it is, it's your way of communicating, it's your way of how you conduct yourself throughout the speech, and it's your ways of how you are doing your communications, maintaining an eye contact. It's all those all determining factors of whether you are a good communicator or not. These, small mistakes, grammaticals, this and that, are just, you know I mean, given that not that much importance, literally, as long as you are not causing any ambiguity in the sentence. See, ambiguity is altogether a different thing. So if you are throwing a sentence which has possible two meanings and one is absolutely off context, then it is going to be very difficult. It's very likely, right? But when you have your context on, and you're communicating in a right way, in a right manner, not using any ambiguity term, or not making your sentence fuzzy to give a hard time for people to understand, then you are all okay with your communication skills, and people are all crazy about your communication and be giving you good feedbacks for your communication. So be very confident while you speak, forget about a grammatical mistake, and continue to work on how you are able to maintain a, this very, your ways of communicating with people, maintaining the context into content consideration. Over to you.
And when you're open to learn and open to the corrections, then I think the number of mistakes a person is making, that can be reduced very easily. Because what
Right.
happens when you are talking to people who are already familiar with the language, I think if they are your well wishers, they'll be pointing out the mistakes you're making. But you should always be open to make those corrections. I mean, once you've been told your mistakes, then you have to correct those mistakes, and in future you are to make a promise to yourself that you are not gonna repeat those mistakes. But yes,
Right.
in spoken this happens sometimes, you can make a very silly mistake, so this should not be stopping you,
Right.
because ultimately our purpose is to put a message across. And I think,
Right.
and if you have started practicing and you've been doing it for quite a long time, I think you stop making those silly mistakes which you often made in the past. So we should be focusing on one thing, that is to practice very rigorously, right?
Hmm.
So rigorous practice can alone can help you reach the level you are
Right.
desiring for. And next thing comes that once you've done all these things, then I think, special words should be written. You should be should be keeping
Hmm.
those words in writing. That what happens some, when you're free, you can have a look at those words, and you can start framing sentences with them. This is, what I do, because a mind is very, you can say,
Hmm.
dynamic. And at times what happens, the words you've been using, you don't forget them, but there are certain words, technical words, which you don't get to use in daily life every day. In daily life, when we don't have such kind of topics to talk about all the time, so there are chances that you might forget those words. So the better way to keep them in your mind is simply to just refer to the pages which on which you've written them.
Hmm.
And then comes that we should be working on other things as well. That idioms and phrases are the inseparable part of the language, right? When you learn an idiom, it is a sentence in itself. So this helps you improve your fluency as well,
Hmm.
your effectiveness as well. Generally, what happens when you listen to those professionals? So they use those standard words
Hmm.
and use phrasal verbs. They use idioms and phrases which are very common. I'm not talking about those which are less likely to be used. But we have to go for the very common ones. If you consult the dictionary, actually, I generally go with the hard copy of the dictionary.
Oh, that's
I don't rely too much on mobile applications, because you don't get the full definition there. You don't get the full use of that particular word. But if you consult dictionaries like, the Advanced Learners Dictionary, they show you the exact use of that particular word and all the patterns which are most likely to be used. And you might have seen some bold letters as well, because they show that and that is very colloquial, right?
Hmm.
So there is a difference. You won't be able to understand just by having a look at it, but if you haven't learned that properly. So colloquial expressions are very different from the general ones, right? So if you are in the habit of consulting dictionary, it's the frosting on your cake. And then comes one more thing, that you are supposed to make it a habit, and that is to to open yourself to different topics, open up yourself to different to read about different topics. Because in life what happens, we find ourselves in a situation where people are talking about different topics. And if you're not familiar with one any particular topic, because every topic has a certain terminology, right? They have some special words to which are going to be used. So if you're not familiar, then you will somewhere finding yourself to be unable to speak in that situation, right? So it's better to go for exhaustive reading, exhaustive learning, and then simply you have to make it a habit to speak every day without exception. Um,
Right.
I know that in our country, people might, those who are not at all willing to learn, may raise some questions like they can tell you that why to learn? We are not actually English people, and we are Hindi, should be we should be using Hindi. We can encounter such kind of comments made by people. But again, I'm telling you, there is no fight in languages, between languages, right? There's no fight. It's people who often do this. Our purpose is to enhance our knowledge. You know, there are certain books which are not at all available in Hindi, and there are certain words which certain books which are not at all available in English. So if you want to expand, if you want to enhance your knowledge, then you need the language so that you can read those books, you can listen to those people who you want to listen to. And one thing, when I was in college, so one of my teachers told me, I really I like I like that teacher. So he told me that if you want to be successful, you should have good command over at least three languages. First, your mother tongue, you already know that. Second is your country language, right? The national language that is called. And the third one is at least one international language. So this is imperative on a person, if they are willing to be successful in their life.
Right.
We should have at least three languages. We should have uh, very good command over, at least three languages, so that we can keep all the options open for ourselves. Because in life we don't know when we are going to have an opportunity. And if we are not opportunities don't always knock at a door.
Right.
They come and then they go. So if you're not prepared to open the door and welcome the opportunities, then the opportunity which you missed will not be coming back again. So we talked about the different aspects, as you talk about aspects of the language. First, that people should be going for learning the construction, right? I mean, framing of the sentences, they should be very much aware of. Second one is they should be working on the vocabulary, right? And third one is they should be practicing without any excuse. I mean, practice is the indispensable part of the language acquisition, or I think any skill which you want to acquire. And the fourth one is you have to be confident enough, right? So sometimes this is very possible, right? You are suppose you are mounting on the podium, or you are addressing a good or large gathering from there. So at times we just lose the confidence, our legs turn to jelly, and then we kind of lose that confidence. But if we know that you don't have to make it visible to people that you are somewhere, you are getting nervous, so you can somehow manage, and this will really boost your confidence. So we have to have the confidence. And the fifth thing is that we should keep learning all the time. I'm not saying that we should not be doing anything else, but this learning, I mean, reading gives you a lot of exposure, right? So because if I talk about me, I haven't been to an institution, right? So the biggest and the best teacher I've found so far is the book, right? I mean, different kinds of books. They have taught me a lot. I've learned those, constructions with those, the framing of sentences. Vocabulary is also, going to be there for you to learn, and you know how to bring variations in your spoken part, right? And when you read about certain when you read the books written by somebody, then you kind of learn the way they are expressing themselves, right? So
Right.
you learn all those aspects. So this is how the reading is going to be quite beneficial for people. And then this is what they can do to learn spoken English. But yes, as you told me, and then I also share the same thing, that practice is the indispensable part of anything. So if you know the language, if you can write, then try to speak. And if you
Right.
can do that, and if you can do that consistently, I think you can see some sea changes in
Right.
your spoken part, right? So if there is any other piece of advice you have for people, then you
I,
share.
I'll complete my points in 3 lines. If one is looking for 40 in general discussions and talks that happens in routine life, then one must switch to comics, short
Yeah.
stories.
Yes.
It is a very good source of building up those routine vocabs and to express the routine, expressions, and to be behaving more like a sophisticated speaker. So one must have these comics and short stories book in which they can also include these literatures that will give them an extra flavor in their communication skills and will make them even more mature and a mellow speaker, which is very important. Second, if they want to develop their technical to be a striking part in their communication skill, to be more arresting part in their communication skills, then they have to build up a habit of reading newspapers,
Yeah.
articles, and editorials so that they could go along with total updations that happens on a routine life, so that they will have an understanding in what is happening around the world. They must have all those awareness about the politics, economics, and everything. Like, and the third, as usually we find, as the language is, you can say, is on a continuous path of formation as it keeps happening right from the time when it was first evolved and even today in the 21st century, then one must be all up to date with all those new words coming out and all those words which are getting obsolete. So just out of this intention and out of this fever that we need to look out and stick out, especially in the queue and the line, therefore we need to use certain vocabs to actually show our impressions, to leave that impression. Then be careful, make sure that the words and the vocabs and the phrases you are using are still in common and still in in use, or
Yeah.
they are coming to terms. And if it is not, then please don't use that, don't make it a part of a practice. Otherwise it's not going to be very good for you, because there are several words which are held to be all obsolete and they are not even heard properly. And if
Yeah.
you speak those, you are considered to be an obsolete speaker. So we have to be very careful on these 3 points. Over to you.
And last but not the least, that if you don't have any interest in learning, then you cannot imagine a magic to happen, right?
Right,
Because interest is the most important factor. Because
right,
if you are interested, then you'll be doing it wholeheartedly. And if somewhere you have lost your interest, or you are not at all interested, then you may be wishing, but you will not be seeing the results. So the this is the most important factor, and we have to keep it in account, right?
right.
So this is what we wanted to share with you. If you really want to become a good English speaker, then I think if you put all these pieces of advice which we have just discussed about, I think you will definitely be seeing those uh I mean profound changes, or you would see some visible changes in your spoken English, right? So with this, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I we will meet you with the new topic on this show, right? Till then, take care.
Bye, good night.